In a valley of rural Montana lies a ranch that has been in use for the past century. For 6 generations, the Powell family has used the land for agricultural purposes. In 1882, Bill Powell's great-great-grandfather homesteaded on a plot of land in Cardwell. In 1910, John Powell ordered a kit barn from Sears, Roebuck and Company. And through the years, the barn has served a variety of ranching purposes.
I've always used it as an agricultural barn and adapted it through the years for whatever purpose it would work for us. When we were children, my father used it with horses. He lambed sheep out in it. We pigged out sows, and we ran cattle in there and did our calving. And we always had 6 or 8 cows that we milked in the barn. And so when I started over, I decided, you know, if I'm going to make it here, I'm going to have to figure out something. And so I started a dairy. And I convinced my dad that if we kept the sheep, then I was going to leave. But if he wanted me to stay, then we're going to have to sell the sheep, and I'm just going to have to concentrate on the beef cows and the dairy cows. And so we did that. And I started the dairy, and then in 1993, they had the dairy buyout program, and I decided to go ahead and sell the cows. I'd been married. We got married in 1985, and we had kids. We had 5 kids by 93, and we were homeschooling our kids and decided that, you know, the dairy's good and the kids were good about helping us, but we need to spend more time with their education and going through that. And so we got rid of the dairy cows, which I was not sad about, and started another phase of our lives together. Yeah, got some plans to fix it up, I guess. You know, all of that stuff has to come off, that new stuff, that grain elevator. And that stuff has to come off. And redo the tin, redo the windows. And just kind of get it back in shape, paint it, get the paint back on, repair it. But most of it, you know, it's kind of up to Tate and Josh, what they want to do with it to get it ready. I've used it. It used to be up, you'll notice on the crest on the barn up there, where the 2 roof levels come together, used to be just a board across there under the tin. And we took some of the siding from the barn that came off, and we used it to put over that board. It used to be really noticeable. To the left of that grain chute was where we were sitting at the table, and lightning hit there one day and kind of made it white. But the barn didn't burn down. I thought it might. This used to be a sheep pen in here. We used to keep our ewes and lambs in here after they came out of the jugs in the barn. Had some milk cows and pigs and range cows, horses and sheep. Never did goats. Always had dogs though. Cats. This little shed on the end was when we were milking cows, when Dad started selling cheese milk. He built that on there, and we had a bulk tank in there for the milk. And first, originally, when he put it in, it was a meat cutting room. We had a meat saw and meat tables, and we'd cut our meat, butcher our cows, cut it up in there, and do that. And then we used it for the milk, for putting a bulk tank in and milking, until we got the big barn. But these are the old feeders in our milk barn when I milked cows. There were 4 on a side, and the grain came down through the chutes in the ceiling, and we fed the cows. I bought this stuff. My brother was a banker in Glendive, and he had a dairy that he worked with, and they were getting rid of their dairy, and so I bought their old dairy equipment, and then we milked cows for 20 years and pretty well used it up. This used to be, I guess, it used to be a kind of the dairy barn. This was the original floor, poured in about 1923, I think it was, that and the gutter. And then in 1972, I think my dad and I poured this concrete on this side. But I'm not sure just when it was done. But this was all an open wall through here. It had the support pillars going up. But when I put the dairy in, then we closed this all up. But my grandfather and grandmother lived over in Missoula, close to the Bonner Mill, and we got all of this lumber over there from the mill at about $5 a thousand at the time. That was back in 70, between 72 and 75, and built this. And then in here was the milking parlor. And all those feeders hung underneath these chutes that I have going upstairs. And in the stalls, which are out in back here, they went across here. It was a double herringbone, 4-stall herringbone, where we can milk 4 cows at a time. The pipeline went down through the center, and the milk machines hang from there. I had 4 machines. Clean up one side, put the machines on them, and then when they were done, I switch it to the cows on the other side and run the cows out and milk another bunch. And the milk room was in that area, and we had the big bulk tank in there. But my dad and I poured all this concrete. He mixed it out there in about a third of a yard mixer, and I wheeled it in and poured it, and we poured this whole floor for the barn back there in the early 70s. I had aluminum siding here to protect it from the water, but you can see I had plastic in back of these boards, and the moisture collected, and the boards, from just the moisture all year round, they've rotted pretty good in here on this side. This was just an add-on. This little building was an add-on for meat cutting. And then the milk tank was in there. This was the milk room in here where we used to milk our cows. Well, I started that in 1976, I think. I started milking. I came home from the Peace Corps in 1970, and then started figuring out what we were going to do, and looked like milking cows would be good. When I was in high school, I think I can remember when I was in high school, a freshman or a sophomore, they said, "Oh no, I'm going to be doomed. I'm going to have to take over the ranch." I had that sense, this is what I'm going to have to do. So I went to college. My mom was real insistent that all us kids get a college education. I went to college, and I thought, well, I'll study electrical engineering, and that way I won't have to be on the ranch. But I realized that I wasn't going to make a very good engineer. So I took up ag science and did agriculture, animal science. And after that, it looked like I was going to go to Vietnam, to the war, to fight during that period of time. And I thought, I'm not really into killing people. I would like to serve in the Peace Corps, and John Kennedy started the Peace Corps, and I thought, oh, that's a good thing, I'll do that. And I had some friends that were over in Hawaii, and I thought, if I join this program, I can go to Hawaii, see my friends over there, and get a chance to go to Hawaii, and they'll pay the way and stuff. But they said, no, you're going to Tucson, Arizona to train. Okay.
Not quite as tropical.
and then I'm going to Venezuela to serve. So I worked with a 4-H, and it's called Cinco de and community development in Venezuela. And after I came back from that, then I came back to the ranch, and kids in the Peace Corps said, "You have a ranch? You're going to live on the ranch? You got a ranch? You're going to take that?" And they were real excited for me that I had that. And I thought, well, maybe it isn't such a bad idea. So I just went through that transition of going from oh no to oh yeah. You can see where these concrete walls were. There was a ramp going up to the level of the boards, and the floor was on top of those concrete pillars. And when I was milking, that floor was still here, and the grain bin on the left wasn't there. And I was running the one bunch of cows out through this way, out through the barn. But they ended up, after 2 or 3 years, I can't remember how long it was, I had cows going out there and they started falling through the floor. The floor had rotted and worn. And so I had to change that, had to get that changed. And so I poured some more concrete in there and exited the cows all out that way and opened this up. And we were raising grain. I was feeding quite a bit of grain to the cows. And I thought, well, I can turn this into a grain bin here and auger it upstairs and grind the grain and put it in a bin and feed the cows, have all the grain real close. If I need to, I can sell it out. So that's what I did. We built this granary to put on our grain that we raised to feed the cows. But this was the main interest for the horse barn. This was a horse barn, that was a cow barn, and sheep barn on the other side of the cows. And the stalls were in here. There was a double stall here for horses, 2 single stalls here for horses, a double stall here for horses. And this is where, when I was a kid, we had our team, and a harness hung on the racks on either side. And this is where our team, when we did it, was. And then 2 single stalls for horses there. And there was stalls over here for horses too, but I never saw any stalls over here for horses. We had this end stall where we'd shear the sheep here, and then stack the wool bags in here for the time when we'd sell it in this one part over here on the boards. This section here was a cow stall where we'd put cows that are calving, having trouble calving or something, would have those in this stall here. In this first part of the grain bin, where the grain bin was, that was a place that was kind of open, but we'd use it to put our sheep in, and then the shearers would stand here at this wall and grab their ewes from the jugs and back and shear the sheep, and would put the wool in a wool sack which hung right from here. And then next to that was a grain bin. That ring in the wall there is where we tied our horses to shoe our horses, saddle our horses. And there was a little grain bin there, and then a hallway that went down through that door down to the other part of the barn. We had a saddle room in there, in a little room there before you got into the milk barn. But when I was here, this was the only horse stalls we used, is this middle one. My dad had fixed up these gates and these pins and the back loft for pigging out sows. We'd raise 4 or 5 sows in here and raise their pigs in the sides in the pens for doing pigs. And we stopped raising pigs when we got atrophic rhinitis in the pigs, pig disease, and so we ended up, we couldn't raise them anymore because of the disease. This is the wool bag. It was right here. It sat right here, and it sat flat. And then this ring went into this spot here. right into this spot. You put the wool bag. I don't know if you guys have seen wool bags or not. They're made out of burlap. They're about 10 foot long sacks and this big around. And we'll put the upper edge over this, around this ring and down in here. And as they sheared the sheep, then they would toss the fleeces up there and toss them in the bag. And then us kids got to get in there and pack the wool down. We thought it was a good job. And boy, your shoes had all that lanolin on them, and you just thought your shoes were the neatest things after you were done. And all the sheep ticks were free. That's one of my good memories of shearing here. And you notice this board here. This board here. This was at the head of the horses. And these holes, this hole and that hole, is where you would tie the horses up, their halters, bring them in and tie them to that. But this was a great place to play. Played here lots. Our kids played here lots. And you know, I'm not sure. My dad said, he wasn't alive, he was born in 1912, but he said when they built the barn, they put up all these ceiling rafters, and they had a bunch of them up one night, and they had to quit for the night, and a wind came up and blew them and cracked a bunch of them, knocked them down. So they decided they needed to get more support in here for the barn, so they got these long timbers. And we don't have timber like that in Montana, so that had to come out of Oregon too. So I'm thinking, what, they get it on another train, or I don't know how they did it, but they put these support timbers in, and they're mortised into the bottom in this big beam. And you can see the mortise up on top where the wooden pin goes through. They mortised it in there, and they support that roof. And that probably, other than the foundation that was fairly well built, that's probably what saved this barn, is these main structure posts here which hold the roof and kept the roof in place. When I came back in the 70s, you notice how these boards are all cupped. They had wood shingles on the roof. It was all wood shingles. And there were lots of holes. It was leaking bad. And so when I came back in the 70s, that's one of the first things I decided I better do. But we took the cupola off the top, and then we re-roofed. We roofed 1 year this side, and then the next year we re-roofed this side and put the galvanized metal up there.
And as you walk through that barn with Bill Powell, it's amazing how every board in there speaks to him. That a project he did with his grandfather and got the day off of school, and he remembers going to Butte to get the lumber, or certain pigs that went under the raised area in the barn, or swinging from a paint bucket from the rafters. Every single board in there has a story to it. And they're all coming through Bill and Tate and Josh, and all of the Powells have such fond memories of their family, and so many of them focus around that it's it makes it a treat to be a part of this building and help it live longer, because they care for it so much, and the community cares so much about them as well.
In the fall of 2017, the barn on the Powell Ranch underwent a dramatic rehabilitation. In effect, it was re-raised. Historically, people of a community would gather to help build a barn on a neighbor's property. With impetus from a nonprofit organization, some people from the Cardwell area and beyond gathered to re-raise the Powell's barn, to make it suitable for present and future purposes.
Thinking about the barn in the original context, the the barn was the hub of all the life on any ranch, and so much activity went through it. And in so many cases, because they were somewhat specialized in a modern context, they've been reduced to just being storage facilities. So it's how do you get that back to being the heart of the ranch, both functionally and the way it looks and how it's used on a day-to-day basis. And the Powells in particular have such a strong connection to this building, so we're trying to help them find a feasible way to move forward to make the next generation successful. In terms of this project, the work that's happening right now, my role is pretty far-reaching. It's all the staging and preparatory work that needs to happen to get all the materials on site, working with a lot of our friends to find donations and rallying people to show up for this barn raising event. And then for the 3 days, or 6 days, excuse me, that all the work is happening, it's keeping all the groups going. So it's making sure people are being safe, helping them along, getting them lined out with tasks, and then jumping in on some more sensitive stuff and helping accomplish that stuff. And so it's trying to keep people safe and happy and a number of other things. And what's great about this project, I guess, is that it's all these things that make Montana great. We have a wonderful, gracious 6th-generation Montanan family. We have the whole community coming out to lend a hand. We're saving this building. There are all kinds of different things that are coming together. That it's a place and a group of people and a community that are things that I think are the reasons why Montana is so great.
So we're doing it, and it's really, for me, it's really fun. I really enjoy meeting all these people, and especially since I'm just about history. It's neat that other people are interested in preserving some of the heritage of Montana. I think it's good for Madison County. I think it's good for our state of Montana. I think it's good for our nation, for us to remember our roots and where we came from and what keeps us together as a people. And let's pray. Father, we do thank you for this day. Thank you for the good weather so far. Thank you for each one that's willing to come here and to preserve part of our heritage and share in this fun day together. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to pull together and come together as a team and not be so divisive as we see so much around us, and help us to be an influence on this world, to help us to pull together and share those things and enjoy those things that you've allowed us to have. Bill Pullman Thank you for this food, has been friends of ours for some time. Our kids used to work for him up the North Boulder, and he knew our barn, and I showed him, there's things about that barn that I really am impressed with. When I was a kid, we just impressed with a good place to play, and we always milked cows there. But then I started noticing how well it was built, and I liked to point that out to different people that would come here. And I showed Bill, and evidently he got impressed enough to where he thought, it would be nice to preserve some of these barns that are in the state of Montana.
I think that barns are, built and they were designed for a different kind of agriculture than the agriculture that we have now for mass generation of food. And so barns really are available to be repurposed in appropriate ways, but they're always a little cost heavy, because you repurpose something historically, and to preserve it, you've got to have some kind of funding base that could support that. Now, it's why I think this project is unique and could help to add value to this restoration of barns. Probably the most common use of barns now is to turn them into event centers. Very people, wealthy or business-minded, will take them and repurpose them so that you can have weddings there, and that's wonderful. But a lot of the great barns are still on ranches and farms with people that aren't corporate farmers. They don't have the kind of expendable income that corporate farms have, or vanity farms, or wealthy people have this ground and they want to take care of the barn. All that work is being done, but this project is really focused on those people that don't have that income. And if we can create this model where community comes together with a nonprofit, and you use voluntary labor, and you ask the community vendors to support this project that's respecting history, and it'll give back for decades and generations, and doesn't have any state money, no federal money attached to it at all, but it comes kind of grassroots. And if we can tell that story around the state and maybe further, I think it'll help to fill that niche. We live in exciting times, and there's a lot of change going on, but one of the changes that's happened in the last maybe 10, 15 years is that I think this country has gotten a better grasp on the value of old things. I grew up in the 60s, 70s, where the value of urban renewal was gut the whole center of town, put a freeway through it, and then business will come and economy will pick up, and that just leveled a lot of towns in the East where I grew up. And there was not a lot of interest in history, but it's changing. Europe has the advantage of having been around a few more years than America. So, I suppose we caught on pretty quick, considering, that it took them probably 1,000 years before they started preserving things well. But I think barns are emblematic of America's agricultural beginnings. When you look at any census at the start of this country, and 9 out of 10 were farmers. Almost everybody was a farmer. It's diminished somewhat and quite a bit, and I guess it's like 2% of the population work in agriculture, but our respect for agriculture and our respect for the quality of food that we have has grown in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, and the barn is used constantly as a symbol of what it is to have the integrity of the long-time tradition of agriculture in America.
Community members from around the area gathered at the re-raising event for a 6-day festival of hard work to rehab the Powell barn.
I'm glad you trust me.
To me, these kinds of people, these kinds of communities, these kinds of places are what makes Montana great, and it's just such a treat and a privilege to be a part of it, and to be with all these fine people from such different backgrounds. Again, we've got 6th-generation people, and people who just moved here, neighbors, people from church, people from 4 towns over that just heard about it that are coming in to take a look at it. So it's a very special thing that's just generated a lot of community interest. And all the businesses in the community as well have joined in to come out and lend a hand or donate materials and do whatever they can, or food, all kinds of things. So it's a true barn raising on an old barn.
The Powell barn rehabilitation was a complicated labor of love. The non-historic partition walls in the barn were removed. The main floor was lowered and a new concrete slab was laid out. Wood trim was repainted a bright red, and the siding was repaired. The original wood windows were also reconstructed.
Seeing something like this come together, seeing seeing Ken and Colt work that concrete, seeing John and his son Ryan working the earth. It's like, to me, that's a symphony. Just listening to how they work together and hearing the work being done and seeing all that work. That's the music of this place.
And if that's all you do is take care of one barn, that's worthwhile. You know, for us, this community of Cardwell and Whitehall, you know, is caught between Bozeman and both, you know, and Butte and Helena and all. Bigger cities are an hour or more away, and this is a rural part of the state, and there's a lot of ways in which you know, people really need to come together to make a healthy community. They don't have a lot of funds to build big community rec halls or YMCAs or anything like that, but we have a lot of good value, quality of life here. And I think this is kind of activity that help remind people that there's a real energetic core and spirit for a place. You know, a real sense of place, I think, what the value of this land is around the town, and the traditions that it came out of, and respect for all of that I think this project helps to cement.
In years past, a barn raising was typically followed by a community celebration. The re-raising of the Powell barn was a large gathering. It culminated in a celebratory dinner. Everyone enjoyed the opportunity to bask in the convivial glory of a job completed and the shared knowledge that a barn in southwest Montana can symbolize historic preservation for generations to come. The Powell family intends to continue to run beef cows, expand a small heritage apple orchard, grow organic grains, and hold community events in the barn.